Bit of a heavier topic today. I just kind of felt called to creating this video. A lot of you are either actively going through, or certainly have gone through, or will go through what's known as a dark night of the soul. Dark night of the soul is from the alchemical process called the nigredo. It's the blackening, the dissolution phase where the old version of you, the ego structures you had in place, who you thought you were, are just thrown into the abyss. And you dissolve and you no longer know who you are. And there's a deep, often depression that comes from this. Because who even am I? What is my purpose? What am I doing? Things that used to bring me joy and meaning no longer do so. And it's because you haven't quite reclaimed the hidden gold in yourself yet, so you're kind of floating around. You're in this depressive stage. When I was going through it's kind of an ongoing journey, of course, but when I was first beginning this spiritual journey and really getting into the deeper side of the shadow work, I had it, in particular, when I was first starting my business, I had this monk mode phase where I was literally living like a monk at my parents' house for about 4 years. Like, got rid of my bed, slept on the floor, was doing all of this deep inner work. And a big chunk of that 4 year period of time, I had suicidal ideations. Now, not the entire time, but I would say for the better part of one of those years, probably a good 9 months, never had any attempts, didn't have any tendencies, but the thought of suicide crossed my mind every single day for the better part of a year. Probably in retrospect should have talked to someone about that, but I didn't, and I worked through it, and had to come out of this dark night of the soul and get myself to a new place. Now, there were a few things that kept me alive, that kept me going to get through this. One was the very good friends that I had close to me. Some of my childhood best friends lived just a couple streets away, so while I was in that phase, I very, very fortunately I went over to their house pretty much on a weekly basis, and we would just hang out and watch movies, and I just had them. I was also living with my parents, so I wasn't totally alone, but at the time I was also doing a lot of inner child work and healing the relationship that I have with them, so there was like a lot of weight with that too. So there was not really like peace for me. I just felt that, everything is changing. Spiritual awakening, political awakening, relationship with my parents. Who even am I? Starting my business, which is the hardest thing I've ever done. All of this thing was happening at the same time. It was a complete just dissolution. There was such an overwhelming weight of responsibility, of growth, and it was crushing. And you can only get crushed for so long before you start to think, I don't think I can do this anymore. Life just is not enjoyable, and I'm not sure I want to keep living it. And that's why then these ideations began. And a lot of that was really, there was a part of me that had to die off before a new part of me could be born, but it's easy to start interpreting that as all of me needs to die to escape this pain. So having those friends that I could see on a weekly basis made a very big difference for my sanity. So if you're kind of in this phase, don't isolate to too extreme of a degree. And I very much did that. I isolate a lot, but they really help keep me sane. But more than that, of like what stopped me from actually harming myself was really, there was three main philosophical axioms. And again, I feel compelled to create this video because this is a big part of what kept me going, because I couldn't philosophically get myself out of any of these positions. Okay. So the first one is kind of the more obvious one that many people have heard, which is the harm that you cause to those other people in your life. Right? If you were to take your own life, as brutal as that would be, think of the damage that you cause to other people. Right? And even if you don't think that other people care, even if you don't think that there are other people who love you, there are. And it's like you're playing a video game and your team is trying really hard to win, and then you're just quitting on your team. Now it's just even harder for them to keep finishing off the game without you. So that was the first thing. It's like the damage that I would cause to other people. Now, sometimes if you're in deep enough pain, you might think, genuinely, that sucks, but I also don't care because I'm doing this for me. So that brings us to the second axiom, which is, so far as I'm aware, every spiritual, religious philosophy or perspective really frowns upon taking your own life. And I suspect that there is some kind of omniscient truth to this. There's some kind of what was it called? Syncretic. There's some kind of syncretism, there we go, that exists between these religious philosophies, that they've all come to the same conclusion, which is you don't do that. And so part of what kept me going was, I don't know if there is not some kind of spiritual, universal, divine punishment if I were to do this. I don't know that if in my desire to leave the game, get out of here early, that my punishment wouldn't be exactly the thing that I'm trying to avoid. Maybe that would be kind of the greatest universal irony, wouldn't it? And God often does seem like they have a very ironic sense of humor. Wouldn't it be ironic if, in my desire to get out of the pain of human existence, and I take my own life, that as a consequence of doing that, my divine punishment is that I am forcibly reincarnated back down here for multiple life cycles to pay for that? Wouldn't that be ironic? And so I couldn't do that to my future self, or future incarnations, if you will, whatever you want to think of, because I didn't want to damn future versions of me, because this version of me wanted out early. And you could say, well, that's nonsense. I don't believe in any of that, even though I think, as far as I'm aware, most religious philosophies heavily frown on it. It's like, okay. So that brings us to the third and final axiom, and this is the main one that I really could not argue my way out of. And this one is much more of a philosophical, kind of a stoic one. And this one is, if you're presented with two paths, one path is the easy road, one path is the hard road. Which of those two paths is the more fulfilling one? 99 times out of 100, maybe even 100 times out of 100, easy road, hard road, which path is more fulfilling? The hard road. The hard road. That's the more meaningful road. That's the more fulfilling road. It's harder, but in going through it and accomplishing it, you extract that meaning, you extract that purpose. It's like, okay, so you're in a lot of pain. You're not enjoying this. You're going through a very deep, long, dark night of the soul, and it doesn't seem like it's going to end. It will end, by the way, but maybe you don't feel like that's the case. Okay? Continue on with life is option one. Take your own life is option two. Which is harder? Is it harder to take your own life? Or is it harder to struggle and suffer through the pain until you internalize the lesson you need to learn and you come out on the other side, however long that might be? Essentially, is it harder to die, or is it harder to suffer through life? Which one's harder? And I think for most people, especially if you're in that painful state, it's harder to struggle forward despite the pain, despite the suffering, despite the weight. That's harder than just ending it quickly. And I think that's the difference between a warrior and a hero. You see this in all the stories. The hero wants to have some big, grand interaction and then either die gloriously in battle or achieves the goal and lives happily ever after, but we don't see the sustainability. That's the hero. The warrior is the advanced form of that. It's the more mature form. The warrior is the one who lives for a purpose. He's ever vigilant. He's on the lookout. He's on defense eternally. That's the warrior. The warrior has to live with that responsibility. He ekes out a living. He finds his meaning. He finds his purpose. And he suffers for that defensibility. He suffers for his vigilance, but he does it regardless. Hero dies in glorious battle. The warrior succeeds and then holds the line eternally. That's harder. That's a lot harder. And so I think when it comes down to suicidal ideations or struggling forward. I think struggling forward is harder. That's how I also know it is the right and more meaningful path.